video, we're going to focus on converting artwork to different satin stitch types. And the satin stitches are located down here, the convert to. They come right after like the run and the line inputs or conversion pieces. And we're looking at a satin. We have a jagged satin. We have a color blend satin. We have a spiral satin. We have a gradient satin, a fancy satin, a contour satin, a radial satin, and an auto satin. The one that I use a lot is this auto satin, and sometimes I'll use this regular satin. They're doing a similar type of a stitch. It's just the way that you interact with it after you hit the convert button. So let's just take a look at the shapes that I have here on the screen. I have a number of different things, but you'll notice that the majority of them kind of flow from one side to another. There's not a lot of curving around or offshoots like this one, how you have it kind of split into two areas. And the reason for that is when you're going to convert something to a satin, you want that object to be flowing in one direction. It's a lot harder for the software to work with shapes like this, where there's kind of like an offshoot to it. And we can look at this one too, but these are all coming from the custom shapes. And a couple of these down here at the bottom are coming from the Easy Art. So Easy Art is just additional custom shapes that are designed to work better for converting to stitches. So if you want to practice along, you can. And I'll show you what happens when we try to convert something to a satin that really is going to be difficult for a software to do because it requires multiple satin objects to make it up. So here we go. We'll start here and let's just take a look at some of these. So if I click on the first one, which is satin, when I click on that, you'll notice that my cursor has a little black dot to it. You can see a start point, an end point. You can see the outlines. The software is now waiting for me to draw the angle lines in. So that's how this satin tool works, is I need to come in here, click and drag a few angle lines for the software. That's what it's waiting for. And it needs me to finish that before I right mouse click. So I'm going to right mouse click twice and you'll see that it created that satin stitch. You can see it created a split satin because this was kind of a wide object. Let's go ahead and select it and you'll see that it's close to 3.5 inches. So this is a pretty big one. And right here, if we look at the distance in here, go to millimeters. 7 is about as wide as we go for something we wear. And this one is 20 millimeters. So this is a pretty wide object. So what happens with the satins is I can select it and I can downsize it. And you'll notice that now it's just splitting it once. And I could get it all the way down to where it is just splitting it one time. Or not even splitting it at all, I should say. And this would be more of your average size satin. And if I select this is about, go back into inches here, 1 inch. So this is like a 1 inch donut. So I'm going to go ahead and select the other objects here. And I'm going to just make them a little bit smaller, because they are pretty big here. And let's go ahead and now zoom in to this area. So now if I come in here, if I select this one, I can go to the next one and it's a jagged satin. If I click on it, you'll notice that it's doing a jagged edge to that satin. So it's giving it a little randomness to it. And if I zoom in here, you can really see how it affects it. And there are different things that you can do in the properties. This video, we're not going to talk about all the properties, but your density is right here, your splits, and you have this jagged edge icon right here for the column, and it's letting you know the value. It's doing it to both sides. It can be the first side only, which is this one, or you could do the second side, and it will do just the outer edge, but it keeps this one as a regular satin. So that's something that you play around with for jagged edge, and the value, how much it will actually affect the jaggedness. So you can see you can get some pretty cool effects with it, and you will utilize it in certain situations. It can be helpful even in some color blending and stuff like that. So you can see that is just kind of an interesting tool. So let's select it, and now let's go ahead and convert it to a color blend satin. And a color blend is, it's showing me the different angles, which are good. And now if I click off of it, you're going to see that it actually is doing a color blend. And so it's using two colors here and it's blending one color into the other. And you can see that it's leaving a lot of open area, because with a color blend, it's really designed to be utilized. Let me get this back to normal here, and I'll show you. You really kind of want to take one object, copy, paste it, and now that second one is selected. And if I do a color blend now, and just right click here, you can see that it's going to blend over the top of it. So let's take a look at this color blend here at the colors that it's choosing. So let's go ahead and change this one to like a light blue. And let's change this one to something like this orange, so you can see it a little bit better. And just wanted to point that out, that it's really needing to be over the top of another satin stitch, because this is not very dense in here at all. Now, when you're working with one of these, you will see that you get a gradient icon, and this is how you would modify it. You might do a convex on one and a concave on the other, because it's kind of the opposite of each other. And you'll see that it will change the look and appearance of these satins for the gradients, so, or color blends. So that's how you work with color blends for the satins. And like I said, I did copy and paste, so I just deleted that one. So now let's take a look at spiral. If I hit the spiral, you're going to see that it actually creates these little spirals. So this is how it will actually stitch it out. You can see that spiral pattern, just repeating that over and over again and giving it that spiral effect. So if I click on it, the spiral, what I have is the ability to change the density. If I go too small, it's going to get pretty close together, but that's pretty good right there. That's at a 3 millimeter. So that is a spiral satin. Now, if this was artwork, let's go ahead and change this back to artwork, because that's really what we were choosing to start from originally. If I come in here and choose spiral, it's going to want me to put those angle lines in again. And it will do that for each of these tools down here, except for the last one. So you would have to come in here and put these angle lines in, right click, and then it's going to fill it in. And so that's the spiral effect, and you can play with that. And now let's take a look. This one's the gradient satin. So a gradient satin is basically, if I choose this and go to the gradient tab, you're going to see that it's doing a linear increasing, and I could choose linear decreasing, and it's going to be the opposite. Let's come in here and do convex, and it's going to be tighter in the middle and looser on the ends. And let's go to concave, and it's basically the opposite at the end. So this is where it ends, is tighter at the beginning and end than in the middle. And that's how, let's go ahead and turn this parallel off, so that gives you a better idea. So that's kind of how those gradients work. I typically wouldn't use them in a donut shape. I would be utilizing something more like this right here. So as I convert this to a gradient, it will want me to put the angle lines in. So let's just put those in really quick. And I'll right mouse click a couple times, and I'm going to turn off this parallel, and this will let you kind of see how it's doing it. Now, you could do the start and end point at the same spot so you don't get that line around the edge. But the thing again, this one is another one where it really wants to utilize, I'll copy and paste it, and I'll go back to the first one. It really needs to be something where you have a solid one. So if I come here and I turn this to none, and then I do have this one over the top of it, you can see that it really wants you to have a satin underneath of it as well. So just wanting to show you kind of how that is. So the next one that we're going to look at is this pattern fill. So I'm going to click on this fancy fill, and it's going to want me to put in the angle lines. Right click a couple times, and now what it's doing is it's filling it in with a fancy fill. So if I click off of it, you can see that it has that fill pattern there. I can change that fancy fill pattern. Most people think that you can only do this with fill stitches, but you can actually utilize these patterns with the satin stitches as well. You just have to be a little bit careful with them. You kind of need a wider structure like what you see here in order to do it. If you get it too small, it's going to have a difficult time showing any detail. So let's come in here, see if we can find one that's kind of neat or different. So you can just kind of see these effects that it's, giving you. So that's the fancy satin. The next one is the contour. Let's get this back to artwork because I think it's important for you to kind of see that. Let's click on contour. And again, I need to put my angle lines. You'll notice I'm always going on the sides that are the narrowest. I'm not going across this way, long way. I'm coming in right here. And that just really helps it. So let's bring these in here. I'm going to right mouse click a couple times, and you're going to see that it is creating these stitches that are going this direction. It's no longer going up and down. It's actually going long ways, and that's a very important part about the contour. And let's go ahead and change this to a 2mm because it's pretty close together. This will give you a better idea of what this tool is about, if you can see if I space this out more, because this is how it's often used, is you really want to put a little bit of distance in there. Let's take a look here. So you can see your mind's probably going thinking, oh, I know, I've seen designs that have that look. This is how you achieve it, is with the contour stitch. And you can just, basically what you have the ability to do is change the density, the amount of space between. It will work on objects that are a little bit more curvy. You'd want it to be a good size though. So if we take this one and I go to a contour, I'm going to have to draw in a bunch of angle lines. And I didn't. I wanted to zoom in first. Let's see here. Let's go back to it. I'm not going to put very many in here, but I'll put some in and hope for the best. Okay, so what happens when you do this is it's doing the lines back and forth, and so some areas, when you get it to where it's thinner in some areas and wider in others, I know you've seen this before, it'll get a little bit more thick in certain areas and a little thinner in others. And that's very typical. You see that in most every program that you do this with. But you'll see that it will kind of break up a little bit so that it will try to keep it pretty close to the other, but it actually gives it a really nice effect by doing that. And you've probably seen a lot of designs utilizing this contour stitch, and it's not difficult to create. You just need to create it as a satin, and then or take the artwork and convert it to this contour, and you just need to pay attention to the direction of your stitches because it will affect the look. So let's go ahead and do this more oval shape, and let's right mouse click a couple times, and this gives you a pretty cool little effect. So let's take this and change this to a 3, and you can see it spreads it out, but it kind of keeps the shape, and that's what's really kind of neat about it. And go to apply again, and you can see it gets a little thicker here and more open in the middle, but it's a really neat effect. And a lot of times you'll see this over the top of another fill, or you'll see them where they're used for the entire design. You get flowers and different things are using these and keeping that open fill pattern to where the fabric shows through. You can just get some really neat effects with it. And there was a design, a free monthly design that utilized this, and I think it was in the spring of last year. Let's see if I can find it really quick. Let's go to April 2019. It's not there. Let's go to May of 2019. And I'm doing this obviously on the fly, so I do apologize. I didn't find that one. Let's try March really quick. There it is. So this one right here is utilizing the contour stitch for the entire design. So this was in the March 2019 free monthly designs. So I wanted to show you this because this is really cool. So if I take this, I'm going to zoom into it. This design, I think it showed it. This is like a JPEG of it. Create a new design here. Let's see. I don't know if it'll do it justice though. You can see it right here, kind of the effect that you get. So let's get back here. So if I select these, you'll notice, ungroup it. You'll notice that it says contour here, and it was using a density of 1.4. This was created, these shapes right here, if I break it apart, convert it to artwork, you'll see that that's all it was that shape using this contour stitch and using stitch angles right here, right mouse click a couple times, change this to 1.4, hit apply, and I just recreated that. So that's how this whole design was created. So you might want to stitch that out. I recommend stitching it out onto something like a black because it really kind of pops out when you do it onto a dark color like that. These will get really vibrant. You can do it on white, doesn't really matter. But this will just kind of show you what that tool is about. So sorry for getting off task a little bit there, but I wanted you to see what that can look like. This is what it looks like with the stitches turned off. It's pretty cool. So now we need to look at this radial. And when you're dealing with the radial, I'm going to bring in just a circle, artwork circle. I'm going to hit Control on the keyboard to make a perfect circle. And I'm going to click on this radial satin here. And the radial satin, what it does is it stitches from the inside out. Let's go ahead and change this to like a 2 so that you can kind of see what's going on here. So when I zoom in here, you can see that it's coming to the middle, but then it's going outward. So if I do a slow redraw of this, you'll see how the stitches are created. Now, I will say this. Anytime you have stitches going in a circle like this, it's very hard on fabric and you will get a lot of puckering. You definitely want to be utilizing good fused stabilizer, and you probably want to use a little bit more than normal because this is going to wreak havoc on your fabric. Just saying. This is a good thing to use. Let's do a copy and paste. Sometimes you can use it over the top of like a fill. Let me change the color of this radial. I know this is weird colors I'm choosing. I know, and I apologize for that, but I wasn't really planning this part. This is just kind of a random thing I'm doing. Let's see, I have that orange. So you can see those stitches on it really kind of well. This will help minimize the amount of stretch and pull that goes on because you're going to have a solid base. But you can see what this kind of effect will do, and giving you a little bit of texture and getting that kind of a spirally look. I would have to say that 2 is about my favorite for the density. And you can see as I zoom out, because I'm more about closer to 100%, that's more of what it's going to actually look like when it's stitched out. So it's kind of a cool effect. But you're going to want to use that on something that's more like a circle. If you try to use it on something like this, and hit that radial, it's not that it won't work. Here's another thing to point out with it too. You see this little blue dot? Let me come in and zoom in here, and we'll go back to the other one too. But this little blue dot, I can change the position of it. But you can see that it starts kind of having little issues here and there. This works okay. Let me change this to like a 2 so you can see a little bit better of what's going on. Let's go to a 1.5. So you can kind of see how this works. It's taking it from this as the center point and working its way around. So let's come back up to this one right here. Select it. And I'm going to go to edit. And I'm going to take this point and I'm going to bring it in over here. And you can see that now it's going to spread from here. So it can kind of help make something look a little bit more three-dimensional in a way. You'll just have to play around with it. Like I said, I definitely, it can wreak havoc on fabric. So you have to be careful and you have to properly stabilize, or else it's going to really start twisting the fabric and get a lot of puckering going on. And so just something to keep in mind. The last one that we need to look at is the auto satin. And this is the one that I'll use a lot to start with. So I have this object right here. If I don't want to be putting in all those angle lines like you saw, I can just start with this one and it automatically determines what it thinks is the best angle lines to use. And so if I right click here, you can see all the angle lines that it put in. Some of them I might need to change. The cool thing is you see this orange one right here. This is an auto split line, a satin split line. And this is just showing you, this is where it decided that it had to break this object up from this one, because you have to do that with satins. You can't just create it as one. So this is a split line, and when it saves the design, it will actually split the artwork right there, and create this as one satin and this as another. When you go into machine form, if you keep it as WAF, it's going to keep that. But point being, it does a pretty good job, and you might start here before converting to some of these others. And the reason is because you're already going to have all your angle lines in there. If that makes sense. You saw that when I create any of the objects, like even this one, if I convert it to any of these right here, I have to go in and select the angle lines, right? I have to come in and create the angle lines. If I use the auto satin, it determines those for me to start with. Now I might need to adjust them, but at least I already have them, and now I can just convert it to whatever I want. The spiral wouldn't look very good in that, but I can do the color blend, and all I have to do is right mouse click a couple times and it will set it. So it's just something that you might want to do. It's just a little tip for you. But I do use auto satin a lot, and I'll start there just to see if it does a good job. Now the only thing I'll say about it that I don't, sometimes it'll give you a lot of angle lines, but sometimes you need a lot of angle lines. But usually what I find is it's not too difficult to modify it. However, I don't want to spend too much time fixing angle lines. So if I see that there's too many that need to be adjusted, I'll just undo it and get it back to the artwork. And then at that point, I'll just choose the regular satin and just come in really quick. And this one, I just really need to do like 2 and hit apply, and it's going to make it really clean and easy to edit at this point. So I hope that makes sense. Is that as good as the auto satin is, sometimes if you really want to get in and edit, it can put a lot of angle lines in at times. Like when you saw this one right here, if I go to the edit mode, there's a lot in here that are close together right here and a little further apart. Like I wouldn't want that. And so I would want to come in and delete some of these inclination lines, and as you can see, that can take time. So sometimes it's better to just put those angle lines in yourself. So, and it's not that difficult to do. Let's take a look at this one and just go to the satin tool. And now it's wanting me to put the angle lines in. I don't necessarily have to put a ton of angle lines in. I just want to make sure it is following the shape pretty well. And it did automatically show me where it's going to break it apart, which is great. It already determined that for me. And it is actually where I would break it. And I could change that. I could modify it. I don't have to keep it at that. But you can see that it doesn't take very long to do this. But you'll also notice that I have way less angle lines here. And so if I need to edit it, it's not going to take me as long, to tweak the lines a little bit. I might want that to be going upward a little bit more, and you can see it just adjusts the line. I might want to come in and be right there. It just makes it more controlled by doing it this way. And so that's just something to consider. Those are the 2 different ways. And it does allow me at the same time to adjust the start points and end points, instead of having the software try to automatically do it for me. So just another thing. That's how you convert to the different types of satins. And so you want to play around with it. Just grab custom shapes, and you can take a look at these and just see the shapes that I chose. And it's just something to play around with.